Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. In this video, I'll prove definitively that the timeline of Christianity shows us that Christianity is a response to the Royal African Falcon Martial Arts Order. And they've superimposed ideas on the reality of the situation, just like you've seen the image of Christ change over the years. When they first started to put out their image of Christ, okay, it was fake. Perhaps it was Dionysus at first, Serapis. There's all kinds of theories in regards to that. But we know definitively, when we look at history, that they were lying about Christianity from the beginning, no matter how you slice it. Even in the book of Acts in the Bible, it says that the disciples and the apostles, what have you, were having disagreements about what the message of Christ was. That's part of this story. And we see in Jeremiah 8, I think it's 8:8, it says that the lying pen of the scribes has handled it falsely. So I call the timeline of Christianity the timeline of betrayal, the timeline of Judas-ianity, what have you. It's important to note that early on they were selling church offices. The church was highly political. But let's get into the timeline. Let's start at about 312, okay? Leading up to 312 AD, there were Christian persecutions. The Christians were being raped and tortured and killed. And the simple answer is there were some Christians, all these people were basically lying. Maybe once in a long time somebody would say, hey, this is obviously based on African martial arts. We see that Horus and Isis worship were in the Roman Empire. The Greeks were familiar with it as well. Certainly the Cretans on top of that. It was clear that there were religious battles leading up to the founding of Christianity. There were political battles, there were guilds who didn't get along, corporate groups, senators, and so on and so forth. So many people were persecuted, including early Christians, including the followers of Dionysus and Serapis. Leading up to 312, where the Battle of Milvian Bridge starts to change things, as Constantine claims that he has seen a cross in the sky in the battle. Now, what changed things? It was a battle. What changed things? It was a battle. At a bridge, the bridegroom, the bridge room, Milvian Bridge. Constantine claims, I could have the word wrong because I was reading it from the annotations. Constantine claims that he sees a cross in the sky. In the sky. Horus, the skywalker. The heavens, the sky. Psalm 19. Open and shut. He claims that he sees a cross, and he crossed Horus. He wants to cross out the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order, and his guy is a corrupt general who claims that he sees a cross in the sky. He's a corrupt emperor, a corrupt general, what have you. Commanding general in his own right. And keep in mind that the rape of the Sabines was about Zeus leading an army to set up people, okay, and to kidnap women at a sporting event. Zeus in Mount Olympus. Jupiter, Zeus's Roman counterpart. A sporting event, the Olympics. Okay, so the sports and the warfare in the West was very much about rape and lying to people and about propaganda, as it is to this day. Is your argument that the Romans were more trustworthy than your current government? Perhaps they were, but certainly they weren't trustworthy. This leads us to 313, the Edict of Milan, which ends persecutions and Christians are tolerated. Now, I kind of sound like French when I said the Edict of Milan, however you say it. Okay, so it ends persecutions and Christians are tolerated. Now, why are they tolerated? Because of this military event where Constantine proclaims himself to be a prophet or something to that effect, and he claims to see a cross in the sky. Okay, so it has to do with war arts. Is it the sole Roman or the sole brother? Is it a Martin Luther King Day or some Roman day? You know them by their fruit. What tree bears soul brothers and what tree bears oppressors? I'm not making a racial argument here. I'm making a logical argument based on truth. A rational and sane argument. This leads up to, we'll say, 395 AD, where Theodosius the First, or I think it's some date to 395. Okay, so Theodosius I rules till 395 AD, I guess it is, and he names Christianity as the official state religion. Okay, and during that time, in 380 AD, the Edict of Thessalonica makes it so that pagan worship is banned and their temples are closed. Okay, so because of Constantine's claim and him backing Christians, a lot of whom are underground, okay, they decide that they like the religion, they want to back him, maybe they give him some money. One way or another, he comes up with this story, and Christianity seems like the type of religion that makes it easier for people to rule over. It's easier to rule over people who are Christians than pagans. So by 380, the Edict of Thessalonica makes it so that pagan worship is banned and their temples are closed. Then at a certain council, I forgot to write it down, Christ is said to have two natures. One is fully human and one is fully divine. In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapses as a result of pressure from barbarian hordes. And for those of you who like to look at things in terms of, that God is on the army's side and they're going to win a flesh-based battle instead of principle, even though Christ on the cross is the symbol of Christianity, for goodness sake, and John the Baptist and Stephen the Martyr and on were killed. Okay, there's that. The Western Roman Empire collapses as a result of pressure from barbarian hordes. So who were the other people at the time when the Romans are taking slaves, they're raping people, what have you? Who are the other people in Europe? They're described as barbarian hordes, and to this day, I've never heard anyone effectively counter that description. They basically were like pirate hordes running around. Now, some are nicer than others, yeah. Some things about their cultures were interesting, yeah. But no offense to anybody, bottom line, part white, they were basically barbarian hordes. And just like the Romans, they were looking for a gimmick or an alliance, okay, and they were willing to change their religion to make it so that they get more money and women and control and try to impress the other barbarians. This is important. Okay, so now what is the role of the church during this time? Okay, what is the function of it? This is also important. The church is said to preserve knowledge, to foster political legitimacy, and to give Europeans their identity. Again, the church is said to preserve knowledge, to foster political legitimacy, and give Europeans their identity. And of course, part of it is to bring stability and to make it easier for people to rule over people. Okay, so when they say, hey, you've all got to be Christians now, something to that effect, right? It made it easier to tell them what to do as they misinterpret the Bible, and because the Council of Nicaea occurred already, right? It makes it easier for them. Well, I forgot to put down the timeline, right? So 324 AD, I believe it is the Council of Nicaea occurs where they decide, what to do about things. So there's several councils that occur. Christ is said to have two natures, one fully human and one fully divine. And the Trinity and so on and so forth are decided on, and they start pushing a certain line in regards to Christian doctrine, theology, philosophy, right? It affects the economy, affects social, political, and economic life. Okay, and again, the church is said to preserve knowledge, to foster political legitimacy, right? This is a political institution here, and to give Europeans their identity. That's why there's so many white supremacists in the church to this day. These are not sincere people. I'm not trying to, ruthlessly bash people. I'm just being fair and just and right. So Serapis and the rape cults, okay, are still there in the underground. Just like the Christians went underground, the pagans go underground. There's even a story called The Rape of Europa, which is about Zeus, aka Jupiter, colonizing Europe and turning them out. This is overkill by the rape of the Sabines. Look it up, you'll see that I'm right. Okay, Europa is said to ride a bull. It goes back to Baal and Bull and the Minotaur and the devil with horns and the satyrs, right? A young Zeus satyr, a horned kind of, pan-like being, a Saturn, right? A satyr, right? They have kind of goat legs and they have horns and they're pan-looking demons, really. And they are part of the mysteries of Dionysus, and Dionysus is said to be a young Zeus. So the Bishop of Rome gains power as the church fills the political void. Pope Gregory, the so-called Great from 590 to 604 AD, exemplified this as he was highly political. He sends missionaries to convert the Anglo-Saxons, and monasteries emerge. So as Rome is expanding, so is Christianity. And they're lying to people, they're raping them, they're taking slaves, they're slapping women around, they're taking their stuff, they're mocking them, they're treating them in a way that's similar to how they treated Jesus. And in the name of Christianity, quite often. Okay, so then the Benedictine monks teach various people about agriculture in the 6th century. Okay, so some people see it as a good thing. They are said to teach them how to work, how to farm, and they start, doing a bit better. But again, can you lie about God and try to enslave people and control them unfairly and try to determine who their social orders are and breed behind the scenes and breed crypto-Romans, what have you, and then say, well, we taught them to farm or we brought them some technology and ride off into the sunset as a hero in reality? No. Okay? But there's a spectrum of intentions that are taking place, as there always is. Okay. So the relationship between the Frankish kings and the church was said to be particularly important. In 800 AD, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne, symbolizing the fusion of Roman Christianity and Germanic traditions. If I can, I'll find you the documentary where I got this from. A lot of this information is from my past research, but the most of the information in my notes here is from that documentary. It was a very interesting documentary. I had to read the annotations. Okay. Keep in mind, I've gone over many, thousands, maybe probably thousands of documentaries in the last 16 years. I've gone over a lot of sources, books, what have you. Okay, I've done quite a bit of research here. So when I start taking notes, I keep in mind what I've learned already and kind of cross-reference it, kind of, test it, what have you. So this coronation resulted in a new stage of papal-state relations and established a model for Christian kings that would influence Europe for centuries. This is key here, okay? This is how things went down, okay? How things didn't go down is that the 12 disciples magically went around Europe and doing miracles, and everyone's like, yay! That's not how Christianity spread. How Christianity spread is in a way that's similar to how Islam spread in popular culture, by the sword, okay? Clever political alliances. Roman treachery. The Romans were notorious for complex and diabolical schemes to assimilate people into their empire. They couldn't just go around Europe saying, hey, we plan to take over the whole thing, or else they'd all get together and take them on or attack them at the same time, kind of thing. So they had to come up with a complex and diabolical plan. And the twist of the truth in the Bible, which is obscured in the Bible, was key in that plan. And part of it was, if somebody was like me, they're smart enough to see through what they're doing, that they screen them out and say blasphemy. And I'm sure most of you get that part. The Inquisition, the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation. Most of you probably get to that part. We'll get to that. I'm probably going to make this in several parts. I wanted to do it in one part, but this, we're not even like a third done here. So let's keep going here. Let's get to a third done here, and then we'll make it in 3 parts or so, and we'll wrap this up. All right. The Great Schism occurs, and it culminates in 1054 AD. There's theological disputes. There's cultural divergence, right? They're diverging culturally, right? They're going different directions. And there's political rivalries. Excommunications resulted in the creation of the distinct branches of the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. So why do these people kind of split up? Okay, there's cultural differences. Some of them are a Western Roman cultural supremacist, some are Eastern Roman cultural supremacists. There's theological disputes, especially in regards to the social order. They say, if you interpret it this way, that means we should do this. and this person's in charge. These things are petty disputes. Now, if you ask these churches, they'll swear up and down that they're the good guy. The Romans will say that they, descend from Peter and so on and so forth. The Orthodox will say that's bullshit, that the Orthodox means how it's supposed to be, and that Romans are just this, that, and the other. The Catholics are this, that, and the other thing. Okay, they're both Roman type of groups, and no offense to anybody, the overwhelming evidence suggests that they're up to no good, and we see that none of them have acknowledged that I'm Christ in this day and age. So we see the culmination of their work working against them. So Pope Gregory IV and the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV had a dispute over secular issues determining who the bishops were. Again, that's one great example of it, right? There's secular issues that determine who the bishops are, and the Pope and the Roman Emperor are arguing over this. Pope Gregory IV is like, no, the not so holy Roman Emperor Henry IV is like, no, do it my way, right? This is petty stuff here. Evil, greedy Roman stuff here. In 1095, Pope Urban II declares God wills it, right? Deus vult, and orders the Crusades. And in the first crusade, they capture Jerusalem. So here's this massive horde of these rapists, okay, in the Crusades. Now keep in mind, mainstream history, most of you probably know about the Crusades. I've done some research into it myself. I used to know a lot more off the top of my head than I do now. I even bought a replica Templar sword and some kind of, what passes for, I guess, a replica Templar shield. And I started using them in my videos, had some fun with that. Did some if I remember correctly, I used to swing that sword on my basketball court and I had a lot of fun with it, to make a long story short. And I did some cool moves with incorporating my martial arts, but it wasn't balanced very well. It wasn't perfect for me, but it was interesting. But anyway, if this was back then, I would encourage you to buy one yourself, because it enhanced my life for like $60 to $80 or so. But I think I actually bought two of them, and my parents took one of them away. Okay, even though I'm a grown man, it's a story for another day. It has to do with the state cracking down on me for a similar reason that the various Christian factions cracked down on each other, except for my arguments were based in moral precision. Their arguments are based in, political rubbish and, sexual control and financial control, what have you. Okay, so again, here comes these hordes of people who rape and murder in Jerusalem. Now, you think these guys just started raping in the Crusades? No. All throughout early Rome and early Christianity, people are being raped and abused by people who work for the state, for the church, you name it, in cults and guilds they're collaborating with. If you don't know this stuff, then you don't know the history of, say you're a Christian, of your religion. Okay? The Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims, they raped and killed lots of people. They ripped them off. That's mainstream history. Okay? I haven't met any of them that would deny that. All right, so where are we here? If you have any counter argument, please put in the comments. I'm not trying to just bash people. I want to tell the truth here, and I put a special emphasis on cross-referencing things over time and telling the truth. And all this stuff seems to check out here. Okay, where were we here? And some of it I know for sure, like the fact that there's a lot of rape and murder going on, and financial control, and so on and so forth. Okay, so they captured Jerusalem in the First Crusade. During the Fourth Crusades, Constantinople is sacked, and Paris and Oxford are formed. I could be wrong about this. I read that from the annotations. I'm assuming that Paris as a city is formed, and Oxford University, or Oxford as a city, is formed. Okay, if I'm wrong about that, please put in the comments. It's not a big deal if I am. And if it is a big deal, always, if you honestly think I'm wrong about something, put it in the comments. And even if it's a big deal, if you honestly think I'm wrong about something, put in the comments. Keep in mind that Paris is a character in the Trojan War, which has rape in it. A woman, is kidnapped, Helena of Troy, and these guys, I guess they're referred to as Greeks. They go and they fight with the Trojans, the Trojans go and fight with the Greeks about it. Or one of these guys fights with the other guy, and there's Achilles, and there's Hector, and so on and so forth. And there's single combat, and this story, right? As it includes Athena and Hera and Aphrodite, and they have a contest over, who's the most beautiful, and the person who ends up, abducting Helen of Troy I forgot this guy's name. It might even be Paris, right? One way or another, it's about rape. He decides that it's Aphrodite because she offers him her assistance in winning Helen of Troy over. Okay. It has the word hell, right? Hell. Helen of Troy, Hellenistic era in Greece, and so on. So there's all kinds of connections. And that story is not so important to remember off the top of your head, but it is a part of this stuff nonetheless. It's a part of the rape of the Sabines, the rape of Europa, the Trojan War, right? It's about females. It's about money and power. It's about them trying to act bad and conceptions of masculinity. And it's about LGBT stuff that's subtly there, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the Franciscan and the Dominicans preach poverty and education. Now this, it's not clear to a T why that is, to be fair, but the overwhelmingly logical assumption is it's part of the confusion, right? The use, confuse, and abuse for the ruse or scheme technique that's being used by the Romans in general. And there's factions of Romans, and they're trying to, it's like a sick game to them. Okay, in the 13th century, there's a lot of corruption, obviously. And that leads us to the crisis and reform era. From 1300 to 1517, there was widespread calls for reform, which led to a transformation, but it was still evil. People were very dissatisfied, and things just kept getting worse. It's Avignon papacy from 1309 to 1377 were in Avignon, France, and people were concerned, or it's Avignon, France, or they're in France somewhere. I read the annotations again. They were concerned that they would be influenced by the French. When they returned to Rome, there was a great Western schism from 1378 to 1417, and 3 rival popes emerged, which led to the Council of Constance in 1414. Many people wanted conciliarism, I guess it's called, which is the general council ruling over the Pope in matters of doctrine and reform. Many bishops were getting rich selling church offices and indulgences, which led to John Wycliffe in England arguing that Scripture is the sole authority. Now keep in mind that Scripture was made confusing on purpose. These guys chose Scripture for the purpose of using, confusing, and abusing, and it goes back to the Council of Nicaea in 324 AD, which determined what books would go into the Bible, right? They came up with the Nicene Creed and Nicene Code, which would determine what books they determined were authentic. And these were corrupt bishops. And this whole time, they're corrupt. After the smoke cleared, after, hundreds of years, right? 300 years of massacring Christians. Okay, there's the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, where Constantine claims that he sees a cross in the sky, the Edict of Milan in 313 AD. That's 313 years after Christ is born, and Christians are massacred, the disciples, persecuted, killed, what have you, apostles being massacred. Here comes what's left of these guys, people who kiss ass and have accepted pagan cult ways to the extreme, and they say, hey, this is how it went. Okay, that's important to note that. Okay. Many bishops were getting rich selling church offices and indulgences, which led to John Wycliffe in England arguing that Scripture is the sole authority. Okay, they didn't know what to do. So they said, hey, just trust Scripture. And that from that foundation comes Protestantism. We'll get to that in part 2. There's the Reformation coming up, and we'll talk about Martin Luther and so on and so forth.